you submit your questions for us over on the Buccaneers Facebook page in the comments section as we give people a chance to do that. Scott, I just wanted to hear from you. Big takeaways from the game against Kansas City, and then just looking at the bye week of, the importance of having it now, what you feel like their goals are, and things that they could want to accomplish during this next week.
Well, I'd say those two questions are very related. It ended up being yet another 27-24 loss, a close one that the Bucs couldn't get the ball back for one more shot at the end. And that was mainly because the team has continued its trend recently of slow starts on both sides of the ball. The offense did not convert any of its first 4 third downs in the first quarter, all of which were 6 yards or fewer, and you usually expect to convert those. So they couldn't get any drives going, which is how they fell into that hole, but otherwise a 17-point hole, but otherwise they kept pace with that explosive Kansas City offense and actually even held Kansas City's offense to 5 points below its usual per game average. So all in all, giving up 27 points wasn't disastrous. The problem was falling into that early hole and having to claw your way back and getting unbalanced on offense again and having some troubles getting off the field every now and then on defense, and erasing a couple of turnovers with penalties. So that's what the team is. It's not the team. The players have that time off. That's what you do with a bye week for the most part. You allow players to rest and recuperate, but the coaches don't take the time off. They use that time to self-scout, and they had already compiled everything, analyzed all the plays, and now they take that an analysis of everything they've done through the first 12 games and look at what's working and what isn't, and what can be fixed and what needs to be fixed. And that's what you work on as coaches this week. And I think one of their big things is, how can we get back to those fast starts we had in the first 5 or 6 weeks of the season when the Buccaneers were outscoring their opponents something like 48-14 in the first quarter? That's completely flipped now. And that's the main problem that the team is running into in recent losses.
Yeah, and that works perfectly because we had a question from Mitch asking, why do you think we have given up so many points in the first half, but maybe we can even say specifically in the first quarter?
Some of it has to do with, you got to remember that every single time that your offense or your defense doesn't succeed, the other team wins. So it's not necessarily a huge failure on your team's part. It's the other team is pretty good. I mean, the Chiefs have good offense, and their early going teams have like 15 scripted plays. And just simply enough, in recent weeks, the opponents have done much better with their scripted plays than the Buccaneers have. And it's been execution in some parts. And sometimes you'd have to take a little time on defense to figure out what the team is doing to you differently that you didn't expect and adjust to it. And the Buccaneers have done a pretty good job in a number of games adjusting after slow starts on defense. But, sometimes they're just getting beat early on. That's all there is to it, really.
Yeah, and Greg had asked, why don't the Bucs use a fullback to help with pass protection? Auclair seems like he could be a good option.
Well, I mean, they do that occasionally with Auclair and some of their tight ends. They'll motion them into the backfield, and they're basically like a fullback. But Bruce is more of a get as many guys out into the field and find one of them guy than a max protect kind of guy. So the pass protection really hasn't been that bad. I'm not sure why that's an issue, really. Tom Brady was only sacked once in this game and actually only once in each of the last 3 games. And he's had pretty good amount of time. I'm not saying there hasn't been times when he's been pressured. Of course there have, but overall, the pass protection has been pretty good. So I don't think taking away one of your eligibles and adding more blocking is probably the direction that we're going to want to go there.
Daniel had asked, what do you think has been going on with our corners and in coverage recently?
Well, I mean, in this case with Tyreek Hill, Carlton Davis got beat on an out and up, and that happens. I mean, Mike Evans beat one of their cornerbacks on an out and up, and that happens. The second one to Tyreek Hill way downfield was one of those plays that we were afraid of going into the game, where Patrick Mahomes moves around a little bit, backs up, buys time, and it's just hard to plaster, especially on really fast guys, for that much time. And the third one to Tyreek Hill, Carlton Davis actually had really good coverage. The pass is just insanely good. The cornerbacks, like most cornerbacks in the league, have had up and down play. But I think their body of work through the majority of the season has been pretty good. Of course, we were playing that game without Jamel Dean. It would have been helpful to have Jamel Dean against this team in particular, because he's our fastest corner, and that team is just loaded with speed. But overall, I think our corners have played well.
Okay, and Michael had asked, what do you think we need to do to get into the playoffs? Does 3-1 do it? Does 2-2 do it? What do you think the record's going to need to be?
I think 3-1 does it. 2-2 gets me a little nervous. If you look at the picture right now, the Bucs are 6th, Arizona's 7th at 6-5, and then there's 3 teams: Minnesota, San Francisco, and Chicago, that are all 5-6. Now, if you look at any of those 3 teams, to get to 10 wins, they'd have to run their table, go 5-0, and you kind of don't really think that's going to happen. I mean, I would be surprised if any of those teams goes 5-0 the rest of the way. So if they don't go to 5-0, they can't get to 10 wins. And if the Buccaneers go 3-1, they're at 10 wins. By the same token, winning all 4 absolutely gets you in. But I feel about 95% confident that 3 wins would get it done as well. 2 wins, and now it's getting a little hairy.
I saw a couple different people brought up, why does the team not do more pre-snap motion in some of the things on the offense, and just a few questions about the types of, whether it's short throws or just there are a few questions about the style of the offense and what you think of it.
Well, I'm starting to get a little amused at all the why don't we put in more pre-snap motion questions that the coaches are suddenly getting, as if, adding more motion to our offense is suddenly going to miraculously cure anything that's wrong. Some teams use a lot of motion, like the Rams. Some teams don't. And has there been much reason to complain about our offense overall, the production that they're getting through the majority of the season? The Buccaneers are like 7th in the league in scoring, maybe 6th, and they have one of the best passing attacks in the league. I mean, I think the worry, things don't work sometimes early on and on third downs, and you look for solutions. But Bruce Arians' offense has been pretty productive for the majority of the 2 years that he's been here. I think you're just going to keep doing what you do, just do it better. Having a lot of pre-snap motion isn't some magical elixir to make plays that weren't working now suddenly work. It's something you either do or don't emphasize in your offense, and some teams do and some teams don't. And it's like some teams are 4-3 defenses and some teams are 3-4, and you do your best to make it work within that. I think sort of hinted at in that question is some of the calls on third down, like you throw a low percentage play on third down, and that can look frustrating. I think sometimes, though, those plays, it's a decision of where you go with the ball. You have some short options and you have some other options, and the quarterback sees something he thinks he can hit and he goes for it. I mean, nobody was complaining about the 4th and 2 pass to down the field to Mike Evans that became a 31-yard touchdown. So I think coaches hear these questions over and over again, and they think, and they say it sometimes too, it's not always the decision making, it's the execution. You know what I'm saying? A
Right.
play looks like it was a bad call because it wasn't executed. Not to say every coach makes some bad calls from time to time and they regret it and they wish they would have done something different, but I think you're going to hear this from all the coaches and players. It's more about execution.
Okay. And we also had a question about Antonio Brown versus Scotty Miller, of why they're using the guys in the way they are, and just the different ways that the wide receivers have been used since Antonio Brown got here, and if there's maybe a way to still get Scotty Miller a little bit more involved.
When Antonio Brown first got here, Scotty Miller was still dealing with those hip and groin injuries, and he was limited in practice almost every day. And coach said very recently, it might have been Coach Leftwich, that Scotty would be getting back to being more involved in the offense. But right off the bat, Antonio Brown, they found things that they could do with him. And in this last game, he only had a couple catches, but in the 2 previous games, he was one of our most targeted guys, was really productive. We haven't hit him down the field yet, just missed on a couple of them, but otherwise has been a guy that's caught 6 or 8 passes and moved the chains really well. And I think it's obvious that Antonio Brown's arrival has cost Scotty some snaps, but I think that they want to even that out a little bit more as the rest of the games go on.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us on this edition of Buccaneers Insider Live, presented by Miller Lite. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for all those questions, and we'll see you next week.